through the love winds. I'm living through the love winds. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to another episode of Reconnect with your teenager with yours truly, Emma G, all the way here in Washington, D.C. If you are new to this platform, if you are new to me, hello, kia ora, bula, bonjour, wherever you are. I am a youth empowerment through songwriting coach, musician, singer, songwriter, and my whole purpose is to save the world one song at a time by not just writing music like the one you just heard, but also helping young people step into their voices, their power through the art of music and songwriting. But of course, it is not the most conventional form of youth empowerment or youth work. So I thought, why not write a book about reconnecting with a teenager? And let's take it one step further and talk to other unconventional or seemingly unconventional experts, therapists, mentors, counselors, so on and so forth, who also work with young people. And today, I am pleased to be joined by none other than Cynthia. I don't even know how to pronounce your last name.
It's Longo Coufal.
Coufal, which is terrible because my last name is also unpronounceable. And, but Cynthia Coufal, all the way from Kansas. You do so much for the world of young people when it comes to the work that you do, because you work with a very wide range of ages as they're stepping into adulthood, which is kind of, I don't know, that really tricky space for a lot of parents, because it really is kicking the bird out of the bird's nest, which can be very scary. And it results in a lot of funk on both sides, both for the teenager and for the parent. So welcome. Tell me about yourself. What got you into doing this type of work? Because you've been doing it for a minute.
Yes. Well, I have been working with young people for 31 years. I was a teacher for 6 years, and then I became a school counselor, and I was a school counselor for 25 years. And I just retired this summer, but I wanted to keep working with young people because it's the love of my life. So now I am a life coach for young people, and my age range is kind of large. It's like 12 to 24, but that is, I mean, all of those ages in there are kind of the ones that I really want to work with. And there's so many really fun transitions that go on during that time. And so I love that's just the type of age that I want to work with. And then I end up working with parents just because most of those kids are minors. And as I work with them, I'm also working with their parents to help them understand what I'm doing with their child. Or sometimes I'm giving them some pointers or tips or things to do to help the relationship with their child.
It's fascinating because, with the space of work that we live in, there's obviously the HIPAA laws that come into play. How do you navigate that space? And for anybody who's not familiar with the HIPAA laws, those are like confidentiality and safety parameters that youth workers and counselors and therapists have to work within. How do you navigate that space when it comes to directing or supporting the conversation with young people, and then making sure that the parents are aware of that journey and those perhaps potential breakthroughs and mind blocks? Because it's not about just addressing the issues, it's about celebrating the wins as well, right?
Sure. Well, that's a great question because that's typically one that kids are most concerned about. What are you going to tell my parents? And so, of course, there's the same rules that I had in my counseling office at school. If you're talking about hurting yourself, killing yourself, or killing others, of course, those are things I have to tell someone about. I can't, and the parents. And then, of course, if they talk about abuse, that's something that I have to report to the state that they live in. And luckily, I haven't had any of that as a life coach. Now, when I was in my school counseling role, of course, I had different times where I had to do that. But I have parents that want both things. I have some parents that are like, I'd like to have a summary of things that are going on in the sessions. And so if I have that parent, then I just ask the child or the however old they are that I'm working with, what do you want me to share? And a lot of times, stuff that we're working on is fairly neutral. It isn't anything that's going to be upsetting to the parent. It might just be something that the parent, like I do a lot of thought work, like
Mm.
think these kinds of things, you're going to have this kind of an outcome. And so if they're practicing new thoughts, I might tell the parent, these are the new thoughts we're working on, so that they can also reinforce that if their child doesn't want to get up in the morning. Oh, remember, we're trying this new thought
I
to get
love
out of
that.
bed or get excited or whatever. And I also have some parents that are like, you know what? I know you're going to take care of them and I don't need to know what goes on in the sessions. And so then I don't give them any summary and they're totally fine with that. And the, but I never go behind a child's back about anything, even if I do need to talk to them about self harm. I will tell the child, I know that you don't want me to talk about this with your parent, but I'm going to need to because it falls under these certain rules. So
Mm.
they're never betrayed by me, even if I am telling their parents something they don't want me to. They know that I'm going to do it, and I also give them the option to be part of the conversation, so that
Beautiful.
they can either hear what is being said. I have some students that say, I want to hear what you tell my parent, but I don't want to talk. And I don't
Mm.
want my parent to talk to me at that time.
Advocacy
And
is a huge thing. Is a huge
yeah,
thing. Yeah, yeah,
but
for
yeah,
sure.
and so then I'm like, okay, then you can hear the conversation. Sometimes they're like, I don't want to be a part of this conversation. This is too scary because they're going to have to deal with it at some point, whether I'm there or not. But
Yeah.
so I feel like it's always been a good situation. I mean, sometimes they don't want me to talk to them, but that hasn't happened in my life coaching business. So I'm hoping that maybe, I know, yeah, really. I'm hoping that maybe the type of um, children or young people that I get in the life coaching realm is a little bit different. School, they get me if they have a certain alphabet, like their
Right.
last name's a certain alphabet, or the last few years that I worked with students, I had only students that had IEPs. And so if they had an IEP, I was the person. And so they're kind of forced almost sometimes, like, oh,
Mm.
you have a problem, you need to go talk to this lady. As a life coach, that's all a choice. Like the child is choosing me, the parents are choosing me, and that might make that situation a little bit different.
For those who are not American, because I'm not American,
Mhm.
and so my audience is quite diverse, what is an IEP?
Thank you for asking that. Even if you are American, some schools call these things different.
This is
But,
true.
for my school, it's an individual education plan. So
Right.
students who have different types of learning difficulties or diagnoses of all different kinds, that's where neurodiversity comes in. I was working with just students who had the realm of different types of learning or
Mhm.
different types of neurodiversity. And I think I had about 280 students on my caseload that had IEPs. So that we had
Wow.
meetings with teachers, we had meetings with the school psych and the parents, and just really talking about how do we best help this child access the curriculum at school. And of course, it could be a million different ways that we might need to modify or accommodate things. And I think that's maybe what sets me apart a little bit as a life coach now, because I have that educational background where I understand how to navigate some of those things in a school system where people who haven't worked in a school system maybe wouldn't know what are the options at school. What kinds of things could my child get while I'm at school? And in my life coaching, I've already helped some parents advocate for certain things at their school that they didn't know existed or they didn't know they were able to do.
That's brilliant. It's I'm very aware of and love the fact that the American school system in particular seems to be making a lot more space for those, adverse childhood experiences and the different
Mhm.
ways of learning and the different, just approaches to the diverse learning styles that we need these days. With the increase in ADHD, ADD, the broad spectrum that autism offers us, so on and so forth. And that specifically speaks to me because obviously, with my history, having had 10 brain surgeries with my hydrocephalus, my learning was very different.
Mhm.
I implemented a lot of using different colors to memorize things and melodies, obviously, because
Uh-huh.
youth empowerment through songwriting. Um, with your, 200, 180 kids that you've been seeing and continue to see, how do you navigate, like, how difficult, I guess, is it to specialize or to focus on the different tools to help young people not just learn effectively, but then be okay with the fact that they are quote unquote different.
Mm.
It's funny I say that because we're all screaming to be unique in the
Mhm.
world of TikTok and Instagram, and yet the minute we are, have that light of, oh, you're different, we kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
go into it a little bit. So how do you balance that with the students that you're working with?
Well, I just I think so much about, I know that they sometimes feel like, well, I'm different. I remember a student said to me one time, "I wish I was normal."
Who's
And
that?
yeah, I know. And so we had this whole conversation that I don't think, I mean, they were looking at normal as these, like this typical kid over here. These kids look like this or act like this. And why am I different? Or why do I stand out in some way? But we had this long conversation about what is normal. And I let them know that there is no such thing as normal. And we just talk about how every single person, no matter what, if you are human, you have 100% worth and value.
Mm,
And no matter what things have been done to you, no matter what people have said to you, because I remember one student said, "Well, my dad said that I was worthless." And I was like, "Well, just because someone tells you that doesn't take any of your worth away. No person can say a thing, and there's nothing you can do, even if you've done something that is against the law or whatever. That doesn't take any of your worth away." And we just have long conversations about how we have everything that we need when we came here. And we get, we have that worth and that value. And
mm,
I know it's so easy to look around and see, oh, well, I'm not like this person, or this person has 100 friends and I have 10, or this person gets all these likes and I don't get them, or whatever. But we just really try to dig down into, that isn't where worth comes from. We can't earn worth by the likes we get on social media. We just already have it. It's just, and it is a difficult concept. And I think teens really struggle with it because they're really trying to figure out who they are. I mean, this is their
yeah.
first, as a child, they don't really think about it so much. But once they start needing to be an individual person away from their parents and kind of away from who their friends are, it becomes really difficult because if they're too different, they might not fit in a group somewhere. And then what will they do?
Mm,
And so we just talk about that there are so many ways, like they think that someone who's outgoing doesn't have any fear to walk into a room where people
yeah.
are. And it's like, oh, they still do. Because I'm an outgoing person, but I still, I don't want to go into that lunchroom where I don't know where I'm going to sit and I don't know
Mm,
who's going to be nice to me. But then I just, even though I have that fear and kind of that sickness inside, I just go up to someone, "Hey, do you have anyone sitting by you? Can I talk to you?" And I tell them that, that fear that comes up, you just have to work through it. You just have to
yeah.
keep on going.
Yeah.
And, the people that accept you and are like, "Hey, sit by us," those are the people you want to be with. You don't want to be trying to be like something where people are rude or, just because
Mhm.
you're fitting into a certain group. So I don't know if that answered the question,
No,
but
no, I love that. I love that. And you've inspired so many other thoughts for me. I like you're talking about when it comes to recognizing and understanding your value
Mhm.
is something that you're innately born with. It reminds me back to a yoga meditation that I had years ago in Barcelona, where the yogi instructor said, "You are loved.
Mm.
You are love, and
Yes.
everything you could possibly need lives within you." And I was
Mhm.
just like, yes, can we please remind our young people about this? You
Mm.
are loved, you are love, and everything you could possibly need lives within you
Mhm.
is such a like it's such a powerful statement and such a powerful reminder that the, we were born perfect,
Yes.
and it's people's opinions that dampen that. And
Mhm.
the most important thing is not to let somebody else's opinion really reshape who you
Mhm.
are, which then took me on to that the story of the $100 bill. Are you familiar with that story?
I think so, but go ahead.
Well,
I
it's
might
like,
not know it all.
well, I mean, I paraphrase very badly. I'm not the best. I'm not the best person when it comes to punchlines, but the whole premise rather is $100 bill stays $100 bill no matter what you do to it. You can
Mhm.
crumple it up, you can stamp on it, you can whatever you want to do, try to ruin this $100 bill, but
Mhm.
it's still $100, and it
Yeah.
still holds that value no matter how much you try to shake it. And that's totally true for our young people, which brings me to my next question. Because as you are working with young people to recognize and hold on to that recognition of their value, you talk about thought leadership,
Mm.
thought what was the term you
At
used?
work, I think I
Thought
might have
work,
said.
yeah,
Mhm.
which I think is such a powerful concept that people don't necessarily like to pay attention to. But the,
Mhm.
the saying of your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your life.
Right.
Yet we are so quick to dismiss those negative thoughts as, it's water for duck's back.
Mhm.
How does your thought work?
Mm.
Are you a fan of affirmations? Are you a fan of how does that like how do you help teenagers to redirect their thoughts in a powerful and positive manner?
At the beginning of school, but actually, no matter when I get kids, I do this, but I like it at the beginning of school because when a school year is fresh, you are just so excited about the year and you have all these ideas about all these things you're going to do and you're going to be so successful and all this stuff's going to happen. And then school happens and kids are mean and the teacher's bad or you get behind in your work or whatever, and then you just kind of give up on all that and just think, oh, well, who cares? This year's ruined. I'll try next year. But I do what I call a belief plan. So I have them imagine the end of the school year, and our end of our school year is May. I know some states have June, and in other countries, I'm sure it's all over the place. But
February to November, yeah.
yeah, I never know what's going on in other places, but, I have them, the end of school. Think about, okay, you just ended the year, you got the grades you wanted, and it doesn't have to be straight A's because not everybody wants straight A's, but you got the grade you wanted, you got on the team you wanted, you have all the friends you want, you just feel amazing. Feel that feeling, and we feel it in our bodies, and we really think about what would that be like to feel that successful and amazing? And then what am I thinking right now as I have that good feeling? And what are those thoughts? And we just write down some of them. And then my teaching is your thoughts create those feelings. So the reason you feel so successful is you're thinking, I'm this is the best year ever. I'm having so much fun. I did all the things that I wanted to do. Okay. Now just think those thoughts and keep reminding yourself of those thoughts right now. And you can have that feeling today even though it's August and we have clear till May to get to that successful end of the year. And just every day they remind themselves, and maybe they change the thoughts around a little bit because maybe their grades are fine, but now they need to work on the friendship, or maybe
Mm,
their friends are good, but they want to join that team that doesn't, even happen until spring or whatever. So they might change some of those thoughts, but they just write them down and they can either have them on a post it note. I sometimes have students like type them up and have them as a screen saver. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever, because they're going to look at their phone a lot in the day, and when they pick up their phone, oh, there's those thoughts that I'm going to remind myself to think. So it's kind of like affirmations, but at the same time, sometimes affirmations can be kind of rote, or if they're like, I am so beautiful and perfect, even though that sounds nice, if you don't believe it,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter. And so I talk to kids too about, like, if they are starting with the thought, I hate myself, which some of them do, you're not going to go to I love myself just because it's written down somewhere.
Mm,
What are some like ladder thoughts? Like, what else could I think? Well, it's possible I could start to like myself. And
mm,
then, we just keep moving up the ladder until we can get to, and we're probably not going to get to I'm perfect and I'm so great, but we're going to get to, I accept who I am, and I accept the way that I that I was made, and I'm good with
yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up that as an example. I've worked with teenagers before. Similarly, reframing those negative thoughts, but in a way that we write a song out of it. But
Mhm.
instead of going from I'm perfect and you know
Mhm.
everything is wonderful, really focusing on the key points that they do like about themselves,
Mhm.
and so that's a really I love that you are incorporating, because affirmations, you're right, for Generation Z, they just they seem
Mhm.
a little bit naff sometimes. So, like
Mhm.
creating a screensaver out of them, creating a song out of them, creating just a diary journal entry
Mhm.
out of them can be a really powerful thing. When it comes to that, those shifts, however, I feel, well, at least in the work that I do, um, from the outset, it can feel like really slow work in
Mhm.
some ways
Mhm.
because our spirit, our soul, our heart are not tangible items that we can witness, right?
Right, right.
So, like, when it comes to the goal setting that you're talking about, how does a child or a teenager that you're working with know that they have achieved the goals that they set out with you at the beginning?
Well, we look at small wins, because even just becoming aware that most people aren't paying attention to any of their thoughts. And we wake up in the morning and we feel terrible, and we're just like, oh well, I feel terrible, and you don't realize that the reason you feel terrible is because some kind of records, or I guess records is probably not something young people know
Oh
much
no,
about,
they're
but
coming back. They're coming back.
I have seen a
Yeah,
few at
yeah.
Walmart. Yeah, that's
I
pretty
have
cool.
one.
That's so fun. But there is a circle of thoughts going around that are probably negative, which
Mhm.
is why when you wake up in the morning, you're like, ugh, I don't want to go. I don't feel good. I don't like whatever. So we look at small wins, like, first of all, just becoming aware that you have thoughts, and that some of them feel good and some of them don't feel good. Some of them are pleasant or unpleasant, is is a win, because
Mm,
we haven't even paid attention to that before. And then after okay, now I'm paying attention, now what? Then we start talking about, okay, well, how would you like to feel? And if you want to feel that way, what would you have to think instead? And then just practicing doing that. And that's a win, just trying to have different thoughts. And we just kind of go, we just keep looking at what are we doing that's good, what step forward did we make. And I remind them at the very beginning, so they don't get discouraged, that these thoughts don't ever go away, like, because that was a mistake I made when I started doing this thought work for myself. I kept
right.
thinking, well, I already worked on that, why does that keep coming back to me, like I didn't think I was worthy, and I didn't think that people liked me, or, all these different things. And I would work on it and I'd feel better and I'd be like, "Oh, I don't think that anymore." And then something would happen where I'm sitting somewhere and people aren't talking to me, and I'm like, "Wait a minute. No one likes me." And it would come back to me again, and I would be mad at myself because I would say, "Well, wait. I already fixed this. I already took care of it." And then I'm like, "Oh, they're all those things are always going to come up." And I just know that I have the power to to turn it around, or I have the power to realize that it's going to be there and just say, okay, thank you, but I'm choosing new me, or however you want to look at yourself, is going to think something different. That's how I used to think. I don't want to
Yeah.
think that way anymore. And so it's a forever process. I tell kids till you're 100, because I always tell them I'm going to live to be 100. So until you're 100, you are going to have to work on this. But that's okay, because they happen less. They're less loud, and you can, start going forward in your life, even though they might be kind of whispering back there, but you don't have to pay attention to that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I heard the metric that we think something ridiculous like 440,000 thoughts
Yes, it's
a
crazy.
day.
Hmm.
Um, that's a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
And so to think that, a good chunk of those 440,000 thoughts every day are not only relatively negative, unfortunately on default, but
Hmm.
also repeated on
Hmm.
default.
Hmm.
That acknowledgement that sometimes you have to work a little bit harder to notice them, let alone
Hmm.
lovingly let them go and transform into something else. That's such important work.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm curious to know, when it comes to working with a 12-year-old compared to working with a 24-year-old, because that's the kind of
Hmm.
age range that you
Right.
focus on. How does that look different in terms of your approach?
Well, my approach isn't too much different, just because I believe, and I tell this to adults who listen to my podcast, because my podcast is for teens, but I have way more adults listen to it than teens.
Mm,
And I believe emotional regulation, which is what most of my podcast is about, and thought work is emotional regulation. Um, it works the same no matter how old you are. How we regulate a toddler is the same way I still regulate myself. I mean, you just have to like think about it in that way. So that part isn't it. The way I work with them isn't any different. The part that I see that's different is a 12-year-old can't leave a bad situation if their home is a bad situation. They can't say, "Oh, well, this isn't for me. See you later," because those are their parents.
right.
Now, we can work on what that relationship looks like. And I try to help them as much as I can. But a 24-year-old who has a bad relationship with their parents doesn't have to go home and see them, or doesn't have to. I mean, they're going to probably have to have some interactions, and hopefully they can repair whatever the damage is, but they have some agency to drive away and not deal with them, or
Mm,
move away and not deal with them, where a 12-year-old can't move away from a family that's chaotic or dysfunctional. And unfortunately, sometimes the dysfunction isn't bad enough that they, aren't going to live there. It's just
mm,
they've got to figure out how to navigate it. And so I just try to help as much as I can, that they can see how much control they do have, and a lot of that has to do with their thoughts, because if they're thinking, "Well, this sucks, I hate this, my life is ruined," that's going to feel worse than, "I'm gonna make it through this, and I'm gonna be able to leave in 3 years." To them,
right,
3 years
right.
is forever away,
Of
but I
course.
just when I talk about that 100-year, you're gonna live for 100 years, if you look at a timeline of 100 years, 3 years, you can't even see it.
Right,
And
right.
so I try to explain that to them too. Sometimes I just use that about high school if they hate high school. Well, that high school time, you can't even see it on this trajectory of life. So, just figure out how are you going to be as positive as you can through this situation, and then you get to do whatever you want when you get out of there, at 18, or
Yeah,
graduate or whatever.
yeah. I want to circle back to the family thing very shortly, but Inquirer Rachel is asking what the name of your podcast is.
It is
And
Better Regulate Than Never, which I think is that's my business name too. So it's underneath my name. But that's why I chose that for my business name, because I started my podcast before I started my business.
right,
And I just love the Better Regulate Than Never. It just, to me, makes so much sense.
yeah,
And so even though my name isn't actually part of my business, I just usually have Better Regulate Than Never life coach Cynthia Coufal. So
Right,
kind of like
right.
put
And
together.
I love that because it's we often feel like we need to get everything sorted and have the perfect life now,
Yes. Yeah.
now,
Hmm.
and success, whatever that looks like for people, especially young people.
Hmm.
Um, we're so adamant that we need things yesterday.
Yeah.
And so the better regulate than never. I love that. You've been running that for how long now?
2.5 years. I started, well, actually, I didn't start the podcast during the pandemic. I did a YouTube because, I was still working in a school. So I
Mm,
had no access to my students whatsoever. So I created a Google Classroom and put YouTube videos in it where I would just, tell them positive things and keep your thoughts going, or like I would just do these different things. And then kids would tell me, I listened to those videos all summer long. That was way after I was even doing them. And I thought, I need to have a podcast. I need to be talking I need to go into kids' homes or into their cars or into the whatever they are so that they can hear this message. And then I thought, and then I will reach more kids than just the ones that are in my school. And
mm,
now that this is my job where I'm working with kids around the United States and people all over the world listen to the podcast. It's just really encouraging to me that this message will get out to many more people.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to maybe throw you a bit of a curveball now,
Okay,
if you're ready.
I'm ready.
You talked a lot about, obviously a big um, obstacle for young people that you work with um, is very rooted in their family life because when they're navigating issues in the home, they can't get away.
Hmm.
Now, I'm from New Zealand originally. My mother was from Erie, Pennsylvania, and I've been living in DC for the last 8 years. But I've noticed a significant difference between how we approach family life in New Zealand compared to here. And
Mm.
what I mean by that is in New Zealand, specifically with our Indigenous people, Maori, there is an understanding and a belief that you as an individual are very rooted in your family lineage, so not just your parents but going back as far back as your great ancestors. You're also rooted, your sense of self and identity is rooted in nature and the earth and the boat that your family traveled to the country on, so on
Mhm.
and so forth. When it comes to living in America,
Mhm.
particularly, I mean, you work a lot online, but you're based in Kansas, um, and I think the belief systems around family are quite different when it comes to how young people show up for themselves and show up for their families and show up for the world. Do you sort of how do you navigate that space, or is that something that even comes up for you when you're coaching your teenagers?
Um, that's such a good question, and it definitely is a curveball. I don't
Sorry,
know.
not sorry.
No, that's totally fine. It makes me think. I guess kind of the way I'm thinking about your question, and you'll just have to tell me if I'm not, um, I'm not answering it the way you were thinking. But I talk to kids a lot about the responsibility of living in a family, and because I've raised two kids, and I have two stepchildren now, and I also have two grandchildren, at which I'm not helping parent, but I'm enjoying very much. But I talked to them about what I talked to my own children about was when you live in a home together, everyone has a responsibility to take care of the home. Because I have a lot of parents complain, well, my teen doesn't clean the room and they don't take the trash out and they don't, do all these things. And I just talk to kids about when you live in a family, everyone has a job to do to make
Mm,
the family work. And your parents aren't the people that just do all the work and then you just lay around and not take care of the things that are part of your home because it's everyone's home.
mm,
And I think sometimes kids maybe don't feel like it's their home because, the adults are saying, well, we paid for this stuff and like you don't have any say in certain things or whatever. And so that dynamic can be different with different families. But I just try to get them to understand that they do have a role to play in their home, and they also have a role to play in their community. I talk to them a lot about giving back into their community, because even a 12-year-old can volunteer somewhere. My children did volunteer when they were in middle school, going to a care home and reading the bingo card or
Oh,
like
wow.
the numbers. Or there was one time, my daughter would go and she would paint the nails for the ladies because they're really shaky, or maybe they couldn't see very well, and she would paint their nails, or she would read the paper to them because they, couldn't see it, or she just did little things like that. And that's
That's
giving back
beautiful.
to your community. And you can do that in a lot of different ways, depending. And we lived in a rural town, so she still found something to do to volunteer. If you live in a city or something, you'd have a lot of things you could do giving back. And whenever you're giving to your community, it just makes you feel better. So even if you are in a bad mood or you feel depressed or low one day, if you go help some people, you just leave there feeling lighter and better. And so it's a way to help your mental health, but it's also doing something for someone else. So I don't know if that is kind of what you were talking about, but I just feel like the family is a unit, and
Mm,
together you work on things. You're all going in the same direction. You're all wanting to have a nice family together, and you want your community to be nice, or you want your school to be nice. So everyone in the school needs to work together to have pride in their school or
of
do
course.
things for their school. So I hope that, I mean, that those lessons aren't always being taught. I see a lot of adults not acting like that at all, but I think
No comment.
I know there's enough of us that hopefully, we're teaching those values of family and togetherness and connectedness, that the world is connected and we're connected to our community and to our family.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that so much. Thank you, Cynthia. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours and hours
I know,
about,
this is so fun.
our work is so aligned, and I love,
Mhm.
like, I keep going back to your thought work, and I'm just like, yes, if only we had more people, youth workers and youth empowerment workers recognizing, the power of thought when it comes to our young people, and
Mhm.
helping them to step away from the TikTok algorithms and recognize that they are in control of where their
Yes.
thoughts are going.
Yes, exactly, and
Just
sometimes
saying.
they need to take a break from that if it's making them feel bad. I mean, I think that social media is amazing, I have a lot of fun with it, but if it's making you feel bad, then you maybe do need to take a break or not consume as much.
I'm a huge believer in reconfiguring the algorithms, by creating content, like you're saying,
Mhm.
that is able to feed into the machine to then generate different feedback.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
which is,
mhm.
yeah, I love that so much. So your podcast is called,
Better regulate than never,
and
and
it is available
on
on,
all platforms. And
fantastic.
my website is betterregulatethannnever.com, just all one word. And my podcast is also on there. So there's like a page of all my podcast episodes there as well. And then if anyone was wanting to contact me, you can email me. I'm on almost all the social media. I
Yep,
don't,
Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I love it.
yes,
I love it. I love
yes.
it.
I have a TikTok account. I've done a few things. I'm putting a few more things on YouTube. So, yep, there's my website. So, um, you can contact me there. Um, there's ways to work with me if you are wanting to do that. So, I would love to hear from people and just see what everyone thought about today and the work that I'm doing.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Well, thank you
Uh,
for having me.
Again, yeah, of course, of course. So please check her out,
Mhm.
cynthiacoufal.com. Oh, sorry, betterregulatethannever.com, Cynthia Coufal on LinkedIn. We have, Better Regulate Than Never on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. Um, get in touch to help your teenagers, or preteens, or after teens, as
I
they
know.
as they navigate adulthood, life into adulthood. And of course, if you are interested in helping your teenagers turn those more empowered thoughts into empowering songs to serve their soul, serve their minds, and serve their mouths. You can also hit me up. My name is Emma G. I'm a youth empowerment through songwriting coach. This is the Reconnect with Your Teenager podcast, brought to you by, of course, the iRant Network or the Ranters Union, with thanks to the Emma G Nation Patreon supporters. If you want to find out more about that, check out the link in the bio. Otherwise, until next time, friends, be kind, be safe, keep singing your song loudly and proudly, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Catch you later.
Breaking in my headspace, I'm trying to get my feelings straight. I've overthought my mistakes, I turn water to wine, so hard to stay sober. I'm damaged and I'm love stoned, so hard to remain in control. Rewriting what I thought I know, and I'm drinking it in, but the lesson ain't over. And I can almost pinpoint where we went wrong. I'm not about the sad songs, the foundation said I'm good to go. No matter what comes my way, I'll be smiling every step I take. I'm a legend, make no mistake, that I'm living proof that love wins. No matter what the future holds, I'm here and I'm not letting go. I'm a legend, baby, you should know that I'm living proof that love wins. Living proof that love wins. It's strange who I used to be, but I'm not going down quietly. I know I create my destiny. When it's bright as light, the evergreen knows it. I left behind the what if, I broke up with the negative. I'm flirting with abundance, and I'm drinking it in. My purpose is magic. I can almost pinpoint where my love began. I'm so glad that I know who I am, 'cause I'm a woman, I'm not a man. Whoa. No matter what comes my way, I'll be laughing every step I take. I'm a legend, make no mistake, I'm living proof that love wins. No matter what the future holds, I'll be here and I'm not letting go. I'm a legend, baby, you should know, I'm living proof that love wins. I'm living proof that love wins. Hey! Hey! I'm living proof that love wins. I'm living proof that love wins. No matter what comes my way, I'll be dancing every step I take. I'm a legend, make no mistake, I'm living proof that love wins. No matter what the future holds, I'll be here and I'm not letting go. I'm a legend, baby, you should know that I'm living proof that love wins. I'm living proof that love wins. I'm living proof that love wins.